Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Romanchakam Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Diramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Juktasya Bhaktamsa Neyunjatapi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Kridvaiva Tripti Bhajata Sadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shiradhikama Bhavayarapara Madhurya Lila Gunarupanamna Pratikshana swa dhanalalupasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Pratikshana dhanalalupasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Nekunja yuno Ratikari siddhai Jayali bhiri jukti Apekshaniya Nekunjayuno Ratikari siddhai Jayali bhiri jukti Apekshaniya Tatrati daksha Ativalabhasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Tatrati daksha Ativalabhasya Vande सच्चाधरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तास्तथा भव्यत एव साधुभिः सच्चाधरित्वेन किन्तु प्रवर्ज प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दं प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरुश्री तस्य प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसादं नगति कुतपि यस्य प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसादं नगति कुतपि ध्यायां स्तुवां तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दं ध्यायां स्तुवां तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दं ध्यायां स्तुवां तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरुश्री चरणरविन्दम् Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Deshatadine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaye Keshavaye Namah, Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Bo, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nil Madhav Radhe, Radha Nila Madhav, Nila Madhav, Jayo Jagannath, Jayo Baladeva, Jayo Subhadrama, Jayo Sudarshan Chakra, Jagannath, Baladeva, Subhadrama, Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jayo Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram, Sitaram, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Premanande, Haribo. Jai Vishpar Paramhansa Prabhajakacharya Suttara Sarasishya Mat ISKCON Pratishta Vibhiti Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana. The divine grace of Bhajaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shubhasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Param Dayal Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Premanama Sankirtane Kajanaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinanda Nishman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrinaya Avatari Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhana Harinam Sankitan Jaga Ki Jai. Yoga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Brihat Mitanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopna Radha Kund Samakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathur Dham Ki Jai. The Lordship Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. Shri Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakra Dham Ki Jai. Paramakaruna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottama Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karan Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Vrinde Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Bolo Shmati Radharani Ki Jai. Shamavita Bhakta Vrinde Ki Jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hari Bol.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladadayine. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha. Yato yato yamitato Narsimha. Bahe Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha. Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapadye. Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringa Darita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare.
श्री भक्ति पद सर्व विघ्नाशना कनु सिंह रे भगवान की जय। भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। गौरदी प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। श्री वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी शतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादेवी शतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसी देव्याय प्रियायै केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रादेवी शतवताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
जितो मारा शरण लो तारा पंच पूरन हो।
जे तुम्हार शरणाला सारा वंच पूर्ण।
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी।
तुम्हें कृपा करे कर तरे वृंदावन वासी।
मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास।
मोराए अभिलाष Yava
Nayane Haribo Sada Yugal Ruparasi
Aminayane Riva Sada Yugal Ruparasi
Ini Vedana Dharo Sakiranu Gata Koro
Ei Nivedana Dhara Sakiranu Gata Karo
Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi
Kara diye Karo Nijadasi
Dina Krishna Dase Koe Ye na Mora Hoye
Dina Krishna Das Koi Ye Namora
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Ye na Bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Ye Nabasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Ye na Bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Ye Nabasi
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Nama Namaha
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradikshina Pade Pade
Dani Kanisha Papane Brahma Hatyari Kanisha Dani Tani Pranasanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradikshina Pade Pade
Dani Kanisha Papane Brahma Hatyari Kanisha Dani Tani Pranasanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradikshina Pade Pade
Dani Kanisha Papane Brahma Hatyari Kanisha Dani Tani Pranasanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo.
श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
Jai. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him. You make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always be wholly beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavitya of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam ki jai. Cheto Datpanamajanam Pavamada Vagnivapanam Shri Akari Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Paramparam Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Ida Sarva Shaktis Tatrat Pita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Ita Drishitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamaki Durdhaiva Vishamya Naradaha Pinana Pisnichena Tarora Pisarishuna Amanina Amanadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundari Kavitambara Garisha Karamaye Madanmani Dhanmanishwari Bhavata Bhakti Raituri Ainanda Tanujakin Karam Paritama Vishame Bhava Buddho Kripaya Tavapada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galara Shrudharaya Vadanam Gada Gadarudaya Gira Pulakai Ruchitam Vapukada Tavanam Agrane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nimishenam Jakyusa Prabhusaitam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Asilisha Padaratam Pinastumam Adarshanan Marmahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadhatulam Pato Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam ki jai. Namama Varannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurati Shinama Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shmade Bhakti Viranta Samiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunnavadi Pachatyari Satayane. Glory to the Shri Krishna's Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because its praise the rays the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious, O my Lord. Your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotion from service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it shall remain so, even if he sandals me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kistakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods, like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or the scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It's also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranam Mangala Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Jotapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrujatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Patsatyadi Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shivarshavanu Videvi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhur Jojala Premadya Shri Rupa Nuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravane Shrimurtaye Dinatarine Rupa Nuga Virudhapa Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namagura Kishoraya Sakcha Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Jayate Namaha Namo Gauraya Sachitananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Vir Baba Bhumistvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpaturabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guruchase Namaha Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Radhakanta Namaste Jayatam Suratur Pangur Amamanda Matir Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastadi Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gobir Gobinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Smriti Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadi Radhi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Vritesha Suravira Vipali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kunandam Aravinda Dalaytaksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadman Amalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Chivangalalata Nita Prakasam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Saduchvela Vitrasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayuvanam Cha Vede Sadurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayor Ratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Yavichintia Tatvek Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Kop Yasoda Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chakti Rasta Jagadanda Chayadan Dantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yad Baba Babita Diva Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Busa Suktarya Meva Nikama Pratitastavanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bistabirya Eva Nijarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivisata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hridesa Vilokayanti Am Sham Sundaram Chincher Gunaswarupa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Navatar Makarod Bhuvanesakintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamamyo Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yasya Prabha Bhavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahman Niskalam Anantam Sesa Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Stani Sute Chaikunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitayamanam Sadva Valambi Parasapam Satvam Govinda Purisham Tamaham Bajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Yaprani Nam Pratifalam Smaratamu Petya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajastram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Goloka Namni Nichitamni Tale Chitasya Devi Mahesu Aridama Sutesa Tesu Tete Prabhavini Chaya Vitasya Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Sistista Tipalaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Vyasya Chitesta Tesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesi Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritakaste Hetu Yasambutama Pitata Samapaitika Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Departure Devi Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samana Dharma Yastadri Gevi Hitcha Vishnu Tayabhibhati Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yakarna Narlava Jaleba Jismi Yoga Nidramananta Dragananda Saroma Kupa Adhara Sakti Mavalambya Paramsmurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Asyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Vulambya Jivanti Loma Valajan Donata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalavi Sesha Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajame Basman Yatasma Sakalation Jesha Teja Sriyam Kiya Prakatiyata Pitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajame Yatpada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumba Twande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajame Agnir Mahiga Ganamambur Muridisascha Kalasta Tatman Siti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhuvanti Visanti Amcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sagilagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrata Kalajakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Dharmo Tabhava Nishayasta Deyasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patakava Deyasta Jiva Yadata Matari Bhava Bhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajam Yam Kroda Kamasa Japranadi Biti Vatsaya Voha Gurukor Vasavya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sarvisim Tanamapurete Guruvinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Shia Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatara Dumar Bhumish Chitamani Ganama Ito Yamamritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chiranandam Juti Parama Pitada Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Visha Videshrabi Vyasya Sumahan Nimesa Dakyo Vavrajiti Nahiyatra Pihi Samaya Beja Srita Vitam Tamaham Il Gola Kamiti and Vitantas Tek Santakshiti Viracha Rakati Baye. See Guru Vastaka prayers. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence out of my respectful basis at the lotus feet. As such, spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body and tears fall from his eyes like waves out of my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna, and he also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress their deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other ceremonial worship of his Lord, are for my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is lit, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied, for my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to about the unlimited conscious capacity on erotic and wonderful, and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. However, from my respectful base, not the lotus suit is such spiritual master. Spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different tastes from Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within groves of Vrindavan. From my most humble base, not the lotus suit is such a spiritual master. Spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful basis of the lotus tree is such spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, I receive the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, I cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful basis of the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantharaj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Verse number 1. Shri Sukha Vacha Dvari Dunadya Rishabha Kurunam Maitreyam Asinam Agada Bodham Shato Pasrit Yat Yuta Bhava Siddha Prapatya Sosilya Guna Britrit Taha. Shri Sukadeva Sukadeva Goswami said, Dwari, at the source of Yunadya, the celestial river Ganges, Rishabha, the best of the Kurus, Kurunam, of the Kurus, Maitreyam, unto Maitreya, Asinam, sitting, Agada Bodham, of unfathomed knowledge, Shata, Vidura, Upasritya, having approached nearer, Achyuta, the infallible Lord, Bhava, character, Siddha, perfect, Prapatcha, inquired, Sosilya, gentleness, Guna Abitripta, satisfied in transcendental qualities. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sukadeva Goswami said, Vidura, the best amongst the Kuru dynasty, who was perfect in devotional service to the Lord, thus reached the source of the celestial Ganges river, Haridwar, where Maitreya, the great, fathomless, learned sage of the world, was seated. Vidura, who was perfect in gentleness and satisfied in transcendence, inquired from him. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Vidura was already perfect due to his unalloyed devotion to the infallible Lord. The Lord and the living entities are all qualitatively the same by nature. But the Lord is quantitatively much greater than any individual living entity. He is ever infallible, whereas the living entities are prone to fall under the illusory energy. Vidura had already surpassed the fallible nature of the living entity in conditional life due to his being achyuta bhava, or legitimately absorbed in the devotional service of the Lord. This stage of life is called achyuta bhava siddha, or perfection by dint of devotional service. Anyone, therefore, who is absorbed in the devotional service of the Lord is a liberated soul and has all admirable qualities. The learned sage Maitreya was sitting in a solitary place on the bank of the Ganges at Haridwar, and Vidura, who was a perfect devotee of the Lord, possessed all good transcendental qualities, approached him for inquiry. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sukadeva Goswami said, Vidura, the best amongst the Kuru dynasty, who was perfect in devotional service to the Lord, thus reached the source of the celestial Ganges river, Haridwar, where Maitreya, the great fathomless learned sage of the world, was seated. Vidura, who was perfect in gentleness and satisfied in transcendence, inquired from him. So this is a wonderful statement showing the unique qualities of a devotee, especially when it says, perfect in gentleness and satisfied in transcendence. One can never be satisfied by sense gratification. And we see that. Yeah, there is immediate satisfaction, and then very soon there's hankering for more satisfaction. So one is never really satisfied by sense gratification. But one can be fully satisfied in transcendence, because the life in the spiritual world is eternal. So there's no anxiety of something ending. There's always expectation of new, wonderful experiences, because Krishna has unlimited pastimes. So one is never bored. But one is satiated or satisfied because of the excellence of the pastimes and the relationships in the spiritual world. There's no envy, there's no lust, there's no anger, there's no lust, anger, then greed. Everyone is fully satisfied. And then when it says perfect in gentleness, there's no abusiveness in the spiritual world. Everyone, especially someone like Vidura, is always very gentle and kind and full of compassion. So here we see two unique qualities. That is, perfect in gentleness. It's not that sometimes they're mean and sometimes they're gentle. He's perfect in gentleness and satisfied in transcendence. There's no satisfaction in things mundane. But there is satisfaction in transcendence. So that's a very important point to understand. It's a major difference between material life and spiritual life. Then, again, why was Vidura so perfect? Because he was engaged in unalloyed devotion. And for who? The infallible Lord. If you have unalloyed devotion for a fallible person, you will eventually see through that person's, or see the sophistry of that person, and become disillusioned with them. But how can you become disillusioned by the infallible Lord? Everything he does is perfect because he has unlimited potencies. So he can make the worst thing the best thing. We don't have unlimited potencies, so we make mistakes, and we can repeat those mistakes also. But Krishna is infallible. He never makes any mistakes. So, therefore, if we depend on fallible people, we will be disillusioned. But if we depend on Krishna, we'll never be disillusioned. Something interesting happened yesterday. A person called me, and they were very, let's say, disturbed by something. And they explained what it was. And I told them, well, you're disturbed because you're hankering for something that is not possible. But if you engage your hankering for Krishna, you will be completely satisfied, because Krishna is infallible. If you're hankering for someone who's fallible, you will be always in anxiety, because even if you get the association of that person, you will see as time goes on that they have many faults. So you'll never be completely satisfied. So, therefore, Vidura was perfect due to his unalloyed devotion to the infallible Lord. That's the only way that a person can be fully satisfied and satiated. If we are seeking the association of fallible people, fallible, I'll look that word up, Fallible. That means that they have faults, so they're going to, at one point or other, fail to satisfy you. What's it mean?
They're capable of making mistakes or being erroneous.
Yes. So, you can never, even if you hanker, let's say you hanker to have the associations of some movie star, right? But once you get that association, you'll realize how imperfect they are, right? Or if you hanker the association of a politician, thinking that person is very great. But the closer you get to that person, the more you will see many faults in that person. So you'll never be really satisfied, because with fallible people, there's always going to be some shortcoming, and it'll be, in the end, it's distressful. But some people not having a relationship with Krishna, even though they have been disillusioned by others, will go back to those people that disillusioned them for want of, for the fact that they don't have any knowledge of the infallible Lord. So there are, it's a common thing when, let's say, a woman is abused by someone. Even though they're being regularly abused, they keep going back to that person. There are many examples of that. So the reality of the existence of Krishna can only be realized in the association of genuine devotees. I remember one time there was this one person I knew everyone considered a very advanced devotee. But this person became attracted to someone, and because of that, they began to lament because there was some problem in that relationship. So I had a friend of mine. He was generally a very happy guy, always joking around. He was a devotee. And then one day, he was miserable. And I said, Prabhu, what happened? Oh, she doesn't love me. I said, what? Who are you talking about? Oh, I met this girl 1 week ago. I said, only 1 week ago? He said, yeah. And you're already in misery? Oh, she doesn't love me. Well, I said, how about 2 weeks ago? Did you know this girl? He said, no, I didn't know her. I said, and were you happy? He said, yeah, I was really happy. So you see, in 1 week, he goes from being happy to being miserable because he became attached to someone. And I guess the first couple days were like heaven to him. And then there was some disagreement, and then he was now in hell. So we see how fragile people's understanding of Krishna is, that they can be very easily attracted to something material, or a fallible person, and think that they've finally found what they've been looking for, and all of a sudden, in a very short period of time, they become totally disillusioned and miserable. See? So, Vidura was already perfect due to his unalloyed devotion to the infallible Lord. That's a huge statement. And we should very carefully think about this. If we become devoted to fallible people, we will be miserable as time goes on, because they will make mistakes, and they will show that they have maybe some bad habits and this and that, and it will disillusion a person. So Prabhupada also explains that when the leader of a country, or a very powerful leader, is not Krishna conscious, the people in that country will all end up being very frustrated and miserable. But if you have a good leader, like Lord Ramachandra, or Yudhisthira Maharaj, or Parikshit Maharaj, then everybody in the country will be happy, because the leader will be making good decisions all the time, and that are uplifting to the people and enthusing the people. And if the leader has unalloyed devotion for the infallible Lord, all the better. Then people will also become very connected to Krishna. Now, as far as modern science goes, modern science is very adamant that they reject any supernatural forces or persons, and they claim that the material world is independent of any supernatural beings. Okay. And they're only interested in what they call natural phenomena. So that sounds nice, natural, right? Just like, someone says, organic, so although that's a buzzword, right? And people say, oh, it's organic, so it's good, right? But the scientists that use this phrase, that they're only concerned with natural phenomena. So let's look this up. Let's look up scientists claim that material nature is independent of any supernatural being. Let's look that up. You see that? What's it say?
It is supernatural.
Being or supernatural. Existence of something supernatural. What's it say? Or you can say, scientists claim that material nature is independent of any supernatural being. It's also called naturalism. And naturalism means that the idea or belief that only natural laws and forces, as opposed to supernatural ones, operate in the universe. You see that?
So what was the thing, Maharaj?
Okay, look up naturalism.
Naturalism.
Huh? Yeah, what's it say?
Naturalism is not so much a spatial system as a point of view or tendency common to a number of philosophical and religious systems. Not so much a well-defined set of positive and negative doctrines. As the name implies, this tendency consists essentially in looking upon nature as the one original and fundamental source of all that exists.
Yeah, so they're rejecting anything spiritual. You see, they're trying to be very clever here. They don't say, well, we reject God. They just say that
The one original.
this tendency, they're looking upon nature as one original and fundamental source of all that exists. In other words, by saying that, they're rejecting anything supernatural. They're rejecting God. They're rejecting the existence of a spiritual world. You see? And that this material world is independent. This is completely diametrically opposed to what Krishna says. That Krishna says he's the controller of everything material and spiritual. So in this one statement, this tendency consists essentially in looking upon nature as the one original and fundamental source of all that exists. And in attempting to explain everything in terms of nature, that means they're completely rejecting the existence of God and the spiritual world. You see how clever they are? They use the language in such a way that you think, oh, that makes sense, right? But no, because that statement that they just made rejects God.
This statement looks like very positive.
It looks positive, right? They only deal with natural things, naturalism. This is how clever they are. And unless you have association as someone who, like Prabhupada, we can very easily be duped, be fooled by this wording, and think this is a very good thing.
Here, in fact, if you read further, there's the sense of naturalism. So there is a further statement here. The sense of naturalism holds that spirits, deities, and ghosts are not real, and there is no purpose in nature.
No purpose. There's another. Yeah. You see, they're completely diametrically opposed to what Krishna says. It's really nasty. And it's limiting people to just think in terms that nature is independent and that everything can be explained by studying material nature, and there's no God, there's no spiritual world. See? Okay, so this is why it's very important that we regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, but our kids in school are hearing this nonsense on a regular basis. It's not surprising that they end up not being interested in Krishna consciousness, because they have this way of controlling people through language, and they purposely say things that seem to be good, but actually are complete nonsense. This is an art that they've refined. See? And unless we are like forewarned of this vicious art that they use of language, we can just go along with it because it sounds good, right? Or it sounds right, but it's totally wrong. This is what is amazing. That's how clever these people are. See? Okay, so the number one point is that Krishna says he's the aham sarvasya prabhava matak sarvam pavartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So 10th chapter 8th verse, he says that I am the origin of everything material and spiritual. So that means there's a material world and there's a spiritual world, and there's a controller of both. That he's the controller of both. They're not independent, right? I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So if you know this one verse, you will be immune to all the nonsense that's being taught in schools and in the name of so-called science. Then again, there's another very important verse in the 9th chapter, where it says, Pakritim swam avastabhya vishrajami punah punah bhutagramam imam krishnam avasam pakritir vasad. 9th chapter, 8th verse, which says, the whole cosmic order is under me, Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again, and under my will, it is annihilated at the end. Well, this is a non-equivocal statement. Krishna said, I'm in control of everything in this material world. It's not independent. And then he says, Maya dakshina pakriti suyate characharam hetunane konteya jagat viparivartate. 9th chapter, 10th verse. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. Well, how can you ignore this statement? He's directly saying it's working under my direction. He's controlling the whole thing. And the scientists are saying nobody's controlling it. You see how vicious they are. Hetana anena konteya jagat viparivartate, O son of Kunti Arjuna, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So Krishna is creating and he's annihilating. He's the source and he is the reservoir of everything. And Prabhupada says, it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all the activities of the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Will and the background of this material manifestation. But the management is being conducted by the material nature. So this Krishna is such a perfect manager that you can't perceive him directly, but if you hear from him, then you know that he is actually in control of everything. And then you understand one thing. The first assumption of scientists, look that up. The first assumption of scientists. The first assumption of scientists is that nature is functioning in a organized way, in a orderly way. That's their first assumption. Now, how did it get orderly? And the orderliness is amazing. Planets moving in perfect orbits, so perfect that you keep time, or you calculate time according to the perfect movements of these planets. You see that? Yeah. What's it say?
Yes. Yeah. It says all scientists make two fundamental assumptions. One is determinism. That means the assumption that all events in the universe, including behavior, are lawful and orderly. The second assumption is that this lawfulness or the orderliness is discoverable.
It's discoverable. In other words, they can figure it out. Yeah, so they don't need God. They just have to figure out, first of all, if nature was chaotic, I've said this before, if nature was chaotic, there would be no science, because it would be unpredictable. But they're saying that it's predictable, that it's orderly, right? So the question is, how did it get orderly? And their explanations of how it got orderly is not based on experimental evidence. It's just based on assumptions that they're making. Now, if something is orderly, meaning it's predictable and it's acting in cyclical ways, there has to be someone in control of it. Just like you could say that the internet is orderly, except when it's down. But most of the time it's up, it's working, right? But what's happening? There are people controlling it. It's not working on its own. It didn't create itself. So, see, these are illogical things that they're teaching in school, that it became orderly by itself, and no one's controlling it. This is ridiculous. Everything they do is orderly because someone is controlling it. And then they say the whole universe, which is much more complicated than anything that they do, they say is orderly without anybody controlling it. This is illogical. It's not science. They don't have proof that it ordered itself. They just have theories. And those theories have never been proven. So we see how their basis of assumptions are wrong. So whatever they teach you after that, after those first assumptions, is going to be wrong also. Okay, so I wanted to really emphasize this, but you have to realize how serious this is. They're teaching things that are not scientific. It's just dogma. And if you say anything and oppose them, they get angry. And they threaten. So, therefore, is there satisfaction in this world? No. Because we're being led by imperfect, fallible people that are claiming to be authorities. They're claiming to know what real science is. And it's a whole hoax. It's not factual. Right? Okay. All right, so these are 2 points. One is, well, they use the word determinism, and what was the second word they used?
The ability to discover the...
Ability to discover, yeah. So determinism means that everything is functioning in a preset way, or in a way that's orderly and predictable. Obviously, you couldn't have science if everything was chaotic. See? And they're saying that they can discover how it's happening. Well, how can they discover what is happening if they reject the person that made it orderly? So in other words, that's another anomaly. That's another, what you would call non sequitur. It doesn't follow, right? Any theory they make is going to be wrong, because the first assumption that they make is wrong. Okay. So then it says here in the 9th chapter, 10th verse, purport, it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all the activities of the material world, remains the supreme director. The Supreme Lord is the supreme will. Will means whatever he decides, that's what happens. Right? He wills something and it happens. Now, you and I can will something and it doesn't happen, right? But everything he wills, that's what happens. And he's the supreme will and the background of this material manifestation. But the management is being conducted by the material nature. So that's a big statement right there. In other words, he creates something that's perfectly sustainable without his direct presence. Right? Just like if you program your television to record something that's going to happen in the future, like you have to go somewhere, but you want to hear this program that's later on in the day. So you program your television to record that thing, right? But all that is intelligence driven. It doesn't happen by itself. You can't will it. I will that by some miracle this program is going to be recorded. No. Our willing is not the same as Krishna's willing. Okay, and he's the background of everything, which means that simply observing nature, you might not understand the background, because Krishna is aloof, right? But yet he's still in control. This is another, it doesn't make sense to people. So how can he be aloof at the same time controlling everything? Because he has infinite energies and powers. But the management is being conducted by material nature. Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species. I am the Father. He's the origin of all living entities. Right? The Father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature. And they come out in their different forms and species, according to their last desires and activities. This is an incredible statement. He impregnates simply by looking at the material nature. He's not even touching it. It's like a flower. If you walk past a fragrant flower, like the night blooming jasmine, yes. So you don't touch it, but you're just walking past it. You smell it, right? And then you look around to see where the smell is coming from. You see the jasmine tree, right? So, but in the case of Krishna, you can look around, you won't see him, right? But yet, you're feeling the effect of his organization, right? So therefore, we need to get knowledge from people who know, not from the speculators like the scientists and the philosophers. Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. The Father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child. And similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature. And they come out in their different forms and species, according to their last desires and activities. That's a whole big organization. It's called the law of karma. That's another thing that the scientists reject. Although they want to study nature, right, to understand how it's functioning, but they reject the law of karma. Like, for example, Einstein, he rejected the law of karma. You know, he said, I don't believe that there's punishment and reward. Right. All these living entities, although born under the glance, because if you say there's punishment and reward, that means there's some greater person who's in charge of that or is controlling that. Okay? That's something they cannot accept. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activated, and everything is created immediately. Because he glances over material nature, there is undoubtedly activity on the part of the Supreme Lord, but he has nothing to do with the manifestation of the material world directly. This example is given in the Smriti. When there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person, yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There is a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains, meaning orders. In summary, material nature, without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot do anything. Yet the Supreme Personality of Godhead is detached from all material activities. Whoa. I mean, a scientist reading this is a bunch of jumbo mumbo. I don't accept this. This is nonsense. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense because you can't understand that God has unlimited potencies. You don't want to even accept that because then you would have to surrender to God. Right? Okay. So, and then in the 7th chapter also it says, Matak parataram nanya kinchit asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutje manikana iva. O conqueror of wealth, there's no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. That means that Krishna is present in everything. The scientists say the material world is independent any supernatural force. It's not true. Krishna is outside and aloof from the material nature, is also inside, controlling it at every point on the atomic level as Paramatma. So again, this is bewildering to the mundane people. They can't imagine someone could be so powerful. Okay, so these are some interesting points I wanted to make. What time is it now? It's like 7:10? 7:08, yeah. Okay, are there any questions? So we discussed about Vidura being the perfection or perfect in gentleness and satisfied in transcendence. We should keep this in our mind today. Perfect in gentleness and satisfied in transcendence. You cannot be satisfied in the mundane world. It's impossible. But you can be fully satisfied in transcendence. And because you're fully satisfied, you have perfect gentleness also. And then we discussed also perfection due to devotional service.
So Maharaj, is a little bit when it says perfection in gentleness.
Perfect in gentleness.
Perfect in gentleness. So gentleness itself is.
Huh?
So can you?
It's already gentle.
Yeah. So what is perfect in gentleness?
It means that if you're engaged in pure devotional service, you will always be gentle. If you're not engaged in pure devotional service, sometimes you're gentle, sometimes you're abusive. Right? Because in Krishna consciousness, your goal is to always be with Krishna. So you cannot be abusive if you're always with Krishna. You cannot be abusive to others. Why not? Because there's prasanatma, and above prasanatma is equality and neutrality. So those are higher principles than prasanatma, which is self-satisfaction and happiness. So what is equality and neutrality? Well, you see that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. So every living entity, including ants and microbes and things, has a relationship with Krishna. Is carrying Krishna in a sense, or is Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. So there you see equality. It's not that, the ant is insignificant, the human being is really important. No, the ant is as important as the human being in the sense that Paramatma is in the heart of the ant as well as in the heart of the human being. So you have this equal vision, right? And that is explained, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavi Hastini Sunichaiva Swapakecha Pandita. So that verse,
518.
Yeah, 5th chapter. Yeah, Pandita Samadarshina. The Pandit is Samadarshi. He sees with equal vision. You say. So that equality is a superior concept than prasanatma. And then neutrality, the devotee is never disturbed by anything that happens in the material world because he's completely dependent on Krishna. He has complete faith that Krishna is going to protect him as long as he's always following Krishna consciousness. So he remains neutral even in the most provocative situations. When people insult him or assault him or whatever. He remains neutral. Of course, if someone insults Krishna or a bona fide guru, then he'll act. But for himself, he remains neutral in all situations. So, like for example, if someone says something insulting to you, and then you answer them with something insulting to them, that just provokes a continual back and forth. So, devotee, as we read in the 13th, 14th verse, the 12th chapter, it's better to suffer than to protest. Better to suffer than to protest. So that means one maintains this neutrality. So the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. A Krishna conscious person does not make any distinction between species or castes. Whoa. Big statement. The brahmana and the outcast may be different from the social point of view, or a dog, a cow, and an elephant may be different from the point of view of species. But these differences of body are meaningless from the viewpoint of a learned transcendentalist. This is due to their relationship to the Supreme. For the Supreme Lord, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme, in other words, he's present in everyone's heart, all living entities. For the Supreme Lord, by his plenary portion as Paramatma, is present in everyone's heart. Such an understanding of the Supreme is real knowledge. As far as the bodies are concerned in different castes or different species of life, the Lord is equally kind to everyone because he treats every living being as a friend, yet maintains him as Paramatma, regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. The Lord as Paramatma is present both in the outcast and in the Brahmana, although the body of a Brahmana and that of an outcast are not the same. The bodies are material productions of different modes of material nature, but the soul and the supersoul within the body are of the same spiritual quality. The similarity in the quality of the soul and the supersoul, however, does not make them equal in quantity, for the individual soul is present only in that particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present in each and every body. A Krishna conscious person has full knowledge of this, and therefore he is truly learned and has equal vision. Equal vision. Right? The similar characteristics of the soul and the supersoul are that they are both conscious, eternal, and blissful. But the difference is that the individual soul is conscious within the limited jurisdiction of the material body, whereas the supersoul is conscious of all bodies. The supersoul is present in all bodies without distinction. Amazing purport. So there's neutrality and equality. So prasanatma means you're self-satisfied. Neutrality means you're not disturbed under any circumstances because you have complete faith that Krishna is my protector, and Krishna is the supreme personality Godhead, the controller of everything. So I have no reason to be in anxiety or fearful. And then equality, everyone, every species is carrying Paramatma in their heart. Therefore, one does not make these big distinctions between one species and another species, because they understand that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. Right? So, neutrality and equality. Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll stop right there. Continue tomorrow. I have to go to Arlington this morning, so I'm going to leave right now.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandhu Muhi Savadana Mate Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Ho Ja Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya Arna Koriyo Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati Je prasade pure sarva asha Chakshudan dilo je janme janme Prabhu se Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasha Jaite Hriday Gai Jahara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu Lokenath Lokera Jivana Aha Prabhu Koro Doya Deho More Padachaya Ebe jas Goshik Tribhuvana Prabhupada Patita Pavana Jaya Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Krishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Eti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ramo Ramo Hare Hare Ramo Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Ramo Hare Hare Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds.